So in a moment of what clearly must be an original thought for these people, they're totally not copying us anti-SJWs and anti-feminists and all that. The SJW community, at least the ones that are still around creating content, plus a newcomer, have decided that they're going to do their own little version of this because they think it's a smart idea to throw something that we throw at them back at us in a worse way. So they're going to ask us reasonable quote-unquote questions, and even questions are quote-unquote, to us anti-SJWs. And yeah, some people like Little Miss Anonymous will say, "But Mitch, there's been loads of replies already." Yeah, well, I have my own original replies to make, so let's just get into this, people.
Are you able to understand the irony of responding to the perceived political correctness of the left with exasperated reactionary hypersensitivity of your own?
Oh, hello, one Janet. It's nice to see you've laid your bed and now you're gonna fuck in it, so haha, nice to see that there. Your channel is probably gonna suffer as a result. I mean, just check out old Steve in this video. That's what you're gonna end up as. But, you know, you do what you want with your channel. As to your question, how are we hypersensitive to this thing? Political correctness is something that caters to people's personal feelings. That's exactly what it does. It allows people's feelings to affect the law, to affect cultural change and political change, when really what we need is cold hard logic and, well, what you would like to say as reason, something that you think you have but you don't. So how advocating for logic and reason is somehow hypersensitivity on our part, I don't know. I've not seen anyone be hypersensitive towards political correctness from our side, but of course no one's going to show any examples here, are they?
How do you define right wing?
Well, that's a very loaded question, Timmy, isn't it? It's a very loaded question, because why are we being told to define it? You're the ones who usually label all of us as right wing, even though it's quite clear that a lot of us are not right wing. But to answer your question, well, it depends. Are we talking about an alt-righter, a conservative, a right-wing libertarian, but somebody who's socially liberal but fiscally conservative? Because then they're both left and right at the same time, although you might call them centrists, or just where that happens to be their thoughts on the matters. It's a spectrum, isn't it? And you lot are fans of spectrums, but it seems when it comes to political thought, that spectrum kind of goes out the window, doesn't it? I cannot really define the right, just like I cannot really define the left.
Anti-SJWs often have an aversion to being labelled as right-wing.
No, Tim, no. We're not playing this game here. You mean left-wing anti-social justice warriors have an aversion to being called right-wing because, lo and behold, people do not like being called what they are not and do not like being misidentified and misrepresented for political and ideological reasons, like your side always does. This is usually sort of a hand-waving kind of gesture to us, more of a waving away of our ideas and thoughts because, oh, they're just right-wingers, don't listen to them, when we are not all right-wingers, because right-wing SJWs would not have an aversion to this because, well, they're right-wing. Do you think Edgy Sphinx would have an aversion to that? No, because he is right-wing. Would Wizard of Cause have an aversion? Yes, because he isn't. He's very much on the left.
Yet they regularly defend the right and bash the left.
You are not the left, Tim. You are part of the left, and it's okay to criticise you because that keeps the movement, quote-unquote, healthy. It keeps us away from forming echo chambers if we criticise each other and vet each other and make sure that what we are promoting in our ideology is not toxic and has not been the result of inbreeding, metaphorically speaking, of course. And what do you mean defending the right? They don't defend the whole spectrum of the right, otherwise we wouldn't have so many people criticising the alt-right right now. Why would Sargon send gay porn to that guy if he thought he would defend the whole thing? He clearly doesn't. The issue is individuals, but you're collectivising them to make this whole point about us saying, oh, we're not right-wingers, but we'll defend the whole right, which you know is not true, Tim. You know that's not true. This is like a whole gotcha moment, isn't it? You're trying to do a gotcha moment. Well, it's not a gotcha moment when it's clearly just individuals. And by the way, I've defended left-wing individuals who you would argue are the opposite of me, like Dick Coughlin against, funnily enough, his own side. So, yeah.
Therefore, why is being labelled right-wing a bad thing to you?
Because I'm not right-wing and I don't espouse their ideals. Duh! It's not rocket science, Tim. Come on. And again, you people use this to smear us and to poison the well and to dismiss our claims. And to tell other people, look, these are right-wingers, don't listen to them, when we're not. And again, we only defend individuals from lies and misrepresentation. And we have done it for left-wing individuals as well. Like Richard Dawkins, like Christopher Hitchens, like loads of other people. I have defended these people before, usually from social justice warriors and occasionally the alt-right. But no, instead you collectivise this in order to make it out that, oh, these people aren't really left-wingers because they're right-wingers, because this is what I think a right-winger is, because they're not me. This is collectivist thinking, Tim. And it's interesting that in one of our Discord arguments that you tried to criticise me for using us versus them words. Yeah, it's okay when you do it.
And if it's because right-wing is used as a pejorative, can you not see how labelling people as SJWs or regressives is also pejorative?
The false equivalence raises ugly head. Come on, Tim, don't start resorting to fallacies in order to do another gotcha moment. The thing is, we are not right-wingers. You are social justice warriors. You are regressives, because that's what you espouse in your beliefs. Because you are those things. We are not right-wingers. Therefore, you calling us that as a pejorative is to dismiss our claims and to poison the well. We do not call you that to do those things, because you literally are those things. Please don't do the social justice tactic of redefining words and then using a false equivalence.
Rather than telling people you disagree with to drink bleach, wouldn't it be more productive for you to have an actual conversation about the issues you feel matter?
I'm sorry, but again, this is another misrepresentation. Also, this guy clearly doesn't know what a meme is. Drink bleach is a meme. It's a joke. That's not the argument. The argument is already said, and then the person says, drink bleach. Or they say to themselves, I would like to drink bleach because this thing is incredibly stupid. You clearly do not get humour, do you?
Or is it just easier to do the bleach thing?
Honestly, at this rate, I think you drinking bleach would do the human race a world of good, because nobody needs this kind of stupidity. There, you see? Jokes. Do you know what a joke is?
You claim to be proponents of rational, logical, evidence-based argumentation. That's great. That's entirely laudable. But when I look at your online activity, when I look at, I don't know, for example, your Twitter feed, that's often not what I see.
Are you confusing logical and fact-based arguments for shitposting on Twitter? Is this what you're trying to do, or are you just misrepresenting that as logical, fact-based argumentation? Because believe me, Twitter is like that. Also, things get lost in translation when you have a character limit of about 140 characters. But it's interesting that you only refer to Twitter and not our videos, and not the stuff that we might do on Facebook, where the character limit is a lot higher, or maybe other platforms. Interesting that, isn't it?
How do you reconcile this claim to be evidence-based and rational and logical against stuff like, oh, I was just trolling you, oh, I was just shitposting, or TLDR?
There's nothing to reconcile. It's called trolling and shitposting on Twitter, mate. You also seem to think that we talk to these people on Twitter when actually we don't talk to them an awful lot, because usually we're blocked through auto-block systems. Usually we shitpost and troll ourselves because it's fun. That's why. There's nothing to reconcile here.
No, seriously? What is it with you people and skulls?
You forgot to include Bane666AU, you skullist.
Are you aware that the ridiculous buzzwords you helped to popularise, like SJW and cuck and regressive, have all lost whatever meaning they once had?
Have you realised that calling people misogynists, right-wingers, racists, homophobes, transphobes has lost all meaning because you've called literally everyone that for the most spurious of reasons? Whereas when we use these words, we very much refer to a specific group of people with specific groups, with specific ideological leanings. So, no, it hasn't lost its meaning, and it hasn't lost its power because it only refers to a particular group of people. Well, you will use these words to anyone who you disagree with. So, no, Michael, it hasn't. And, by the way, do you still think we should take your word on it because you are a proven liar? We saw what you did with Bearing. Come on, Michael.
And only serve now as catch-all insults and pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation.
Oh, I see where you're getting this from. Because a lot of alt-writers who have no real arguments to speak of will use it against people who have real arguments against them. Therefore, we all must do it, because we're all right-wing, we're all alt-writers, and we all consider ourselves to be such great debaters that just calling you these pejorative buzzword terms is a great argument. Well, no, that's not true, because most of us will use it in the way it was meant to be intended, and it doesn't lose its power that way, because alt-writers are barely a fraction of the anti-SJW so-called community, and it's still not used nearly as much as you lot use all those other pejoratives that I mentioned, where you do actually use them to derail conversations and to actually stop conversations from being had, because if you have these conversations, you therefore must be a right-winger or a misogynist or a homophobe or a transphobe or a racist or whatever it is. So, again, false equivalence.
For the last time, what is it with you people and committing actual literal felonies?
Now, mate, I wouldn't go there because, as we have clearly seen, here is one of your own, Hannibal the Victor, doing the exact same thing. Two can play it this game. Difference is you're doing it for the purposes of ad hominem, while I am disproving this ad hominem by showing that, look, even your side can do even worse felons than assaulting a police officer. So, yeah, let's stick to actual arguments rather than trying to basically smear both camps as paedophiles or people who assault police officers, because this is not helping. This is poisoning the well, Draco. But then again, what do I expect from someone who does look like Draco Malfoy? I expect nothing else. And in case you want to know, that's a joke, mate, because you look like the guy who played Draco Malfoy. You see what I mean? Yeah, that's called a joke, not an ad hom.
Like, you might want to work on that?
You know what's funny? When the Ralph got arrested and the news reached our quote-unquote community, me and several others, most notably Scrump Monkey, revelled in him being arrested, because not many people like the Ralph retort anymore. In fact, that's quite a majority of people either do not care for him or actively despise him, because this guy is everything we do not want to be. He allows harassment to happen, he allows doxing to happen, and his quality of work has deteriorated to the point of just shit. It's just shit, and also a lot of it is just smear pieces at this point. We had so much schadenfreude, I swear we got high off it. Scrump Monkey even did a video on him, mocking him for being arrested. So yeah, we are working on it. While it seems that you lot are content to sweep Hannibal the Victor under the rug because he doesn't exist anymore. Also, I wonder how Laughing Witch is doing in her bankruptcy court case. I bet she has a criminal record about that now, doesn't she?
I mean, I thought the Ralph retort was so rational when he was fantasizing about beating up women with dyed hair, but...
Now, the Ralph is a lot of things, but he's never really claimed to be rational, has he? I mean, I don't remember him ever claiming that, because he isn't at all, and I'm pretty sure, if I remember what you're talking about, he was taking the piss there, but hey, you know what, I might not like the guy, but at least I can be honest and say that he was joking about that, if I know which article you are referring to. See, this is the thing. I can be honest about these people, but they can't seem to be honest about us. Or he can't be honest about me either, but, you know, that's neither here or there.
Then he assaulted a police officer, and finally I was convinced.
And then I found out that Hannibal the Victor was a paedophile. Wow, that sure convinced me that he was all for the protection of the women's. Yeah, mate, this says nothing about us. This says nothing. Mate, this is not an argument. This isn't an ad hominem. And you really are not helping here. Your arguments are the worst. In fact, they're not even arguments, not even questions. They're just smearing. One person, and therefore we have an issue with felons. I only know of him and one person who technically is a felon. I think, is it Wizard of Cause because he had possession of weed, which a lot of you would agree that weed deserves to be legalized, right? I am all for the legalization of drugs, but come on, would you use that against him? So why are you using Ralph's against the whole quote-unquote community when he's just one person who burned all his bridges against us? It doesn't make any sense, other than just to smear us. And yet you lot are accusing us of not being as rational and logical as we say we are, yet here this guy is defeating all of that. You lot are literally what you accuse us of being.
In videos and in the comment sections, anti-feminists often take up the most extreme or the weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is.
Can you bring forth any examples of this, Christy? Because so far, this sounds like utter projection, because this is exactly what you do to us. Oh, do you want examples of that? Your whole videography is an example of that, and also your myriad of arguments in the comment sections. I remember we once had an argument. You blocked me for it, so... yeah, wasn't that about Laughing Witch? You were defending her, or Jenny McDermott, because they were doing some heinous shit and you were defending them? Yeah, no wonder you blocked me.
Instead, why not take up the strongest, most robust feminist argument you can find and really challenge yourself?
Which arguments would those be? Because I've not seen a single one that is strong and robust and fails to stand up to scrutiny or criticism or logical reasoning. It just doesn't. None of your arguments do. None of them. You can't even name your own arguments. Not even the weak ones, not even the strong ones, quote unquote, because they're all weak and they all fail.
I am deeply concerned with male addiction rates, suicide rates, and abuse rates, because I have worked with these issues in the quote-unquote real world.
Excellent, Christiosity. Are we sure you're not lying about that like you lied about Bearing? But in all seriousness, you care about us. Great, you care about us. You apparently work with us. So why does there have to be a but?
Would you be willing as anti-feminists to put aside your differences with feminists for the greater good of addressing these issues, especially as the kind of solutions needed are not necessarily gendered?
And this is why I probably would not put aside my differences, because you have put in a difference right there, which means that I cannot work with you, because for some odd reason, women's issues require gendered responses to these issues, gendered solutions, yet male issues don't, because they're male issues. So to deal with male addiction rates, male suicide rates, and male problems, we shouldn't go for a gendered solution. That makes no utter sense, Christiosity, and this is why you lot cannot be trusted with these issues. This is why we cannot work with you, because you have these double standards, you have this double think in regards to this. This is why we can't work with you, and this would be at the detriment of these guys who are suffering from these issues.
And if so, I would actually like you to let me know, because I'm not fucking around or presenting any gotchas here. I actually really think that we could get something done if we work together.
Well, stop virtue signaling and stop being a hypocrite, because how come when we talk about female issues they have to be gendered, but male issues don't? Please don't give me this utter drivel, and maybe then we can actually work together, Christiosity. But the thing is, I cannot work with people like you who lie and then misrepresent things, and then put forth this utter double standard, this contradiction. People like you cannot be worked with.
What is...
Steve!
What is third wave feminism?
I'm pretty sure we didn't coin that term, you feminists coined that term, so really you ought to know what it is, because you are that, you are the third wave. But I guess the third wave would be people who are a very authoritarian branch, who have taken things that were theorised and brought up from the second wave into the mainstream and into reality. For example, the teachings of Debunking and Steinem, stuff like that. These are the people who believe in safe spaces, the 1 in 4 myth, the wage gap myth, although they always have believed in that, stuff like that. But they also tend to be younger, and it tends to be very internet based and slacktivist based. But you know, look, let's just continue, Steve.
Because I've often heard you folks insist that you have no objection to feminism in general. It's specifically third wave feminism.
Well, I have an issue with it in general, because in the first and second waves, there were many misandrist and sexist elements within those movements. The White Feather Campaign, the Scum Manifesto, the teachings of Dworkin, where every man is a potential rapist, stuff like that. Some people don't have an issue, and that's fine. I couldn't tell you if that's most of us or less of us, but, you know, whatever. Continue, Steve.
That you have a quarrel with. So what is third wave feminism specifically?
Steve, a rhetorical question does not mean an argument or an actual question. So, yeah, come on, just don't do this. We know what it means.
And what specifically about third wave feminism do you have such a problem with?
Well, I'd love to stay in chat, Steve, but you blocked all of us on Twitter, so we can't actually tell you this. So what's the point? But I will say anyway, the censorship, the hate mobs that they create on Twitter, the safe spaces, the trigger warnings, the rejection of scientific studies, and their attempts to create draconian laws when it comes to sexual assault and stuff on the streets like catcalling, stuff like that, where they're actually making it almost illegal in Nottinghamshire to look at a woman. Stuff like that. That's what we take issue with. Of course, all this stems from the earlier waves, but a lot of people don't seem to acknowledge that, but that's just my opinion. But then again, it's different to other people in the third wave as well, so you could ask them too. It's different to every person, because there's no real one way of looking at it.
Why is it that this feminist represents all feminists?
Said no anti-feminist, ever. Come on, don't misrepresent us here. Come on, don't misrepresent us.
But this men's rights activist doesn't represent all men's rights activists.
Whoa, wait, sexism all of a sudden? Ladies and men are different? So we're supposed to punch men and not hit ladies and open doors for men, but not ladies? Fuck you, get out of my face, you tiny piece of shit.
Oh look, a contextless video which is meant to be evidence that this guy is apparently an MRA. Okay, how do we know he is? Just because you say he is, therefore we should believe you? No, I don't think so. And the thing is, your movement already does that to them anyway. I mean, you've called loads of people MRAs like Walcott, Cops, Bruce V, loads of people, Sargon is another example, and they're not MRAs. So why should we trust a group of people who have a bad track record of naming one single MRA that isn't the Honey Badgers or Paul Elam and say this guy's an MRA? Are you saying that he isn't an MRA, but therefore he must be because he says these things? Oh god.
Why am I continually asked to answer for the views of feminists if I agree with feminism's overall aims, but don't agree much with those particular feminists?
So it's okay for you to tell us to answer for Bearing and all the other stupid things that you accuse him of doing, what you accuse Sargon of doing, and the straw men anti-SJWs that you have concocted. But then you have an aversion to when someone who may or may not have told you to do this yourself, when a feminist does something bad. It's interesting that you're complaining about that, because I've not seen anyone do that, because we're not collectivists, we're individualists. I'm asking you to explain yourself, not the whole movement, and not some other person. But also, if what you mean by that is criticising your own movement, what's wrong with that? We criticise each other on our side. It keeps things healthy, like I said before. It keeps people motivated and away from bad ideas. It's called peer review. It seems like you lot prefer to live in echo chambers where you all agree with the same things and come up with the same horrible ideas, and now look where we are. Just saying, Tim.
Does that mean that I can ask you to answer for anybody who labels themselves similarly to you, even if you don't agree much?
You do that anyway, Tim, so why are you trying to ask this stupid rhetorical question?
If SJWs are bad...
I'm sorry, what?
If SJWs...
Come again?
If SJWs...
SJWs?
If SJWs...
I've never heard of SJWs. I think you mean SJWs. Is that a mistake, or do you honestly think that's what it's called, Draco? Is that really what you think it's called? Because I've got news for you, it isn't. And if it is a mistake, why didn't you do another take? Did Christy Winters not go, you said SJWs wrong, and then you simply just have to say the same thing over and over again until you get it right, which could be one take, it could be quintillion, I don't know. Really, well done, people. Excellent standards.
Because they spend too much time whining and don't talk about real problems. Then why aren't you talking about those problems instead of just whining about the other people over and over and over for literally years?
Well, you see, when you're not finished ad homing us and smearing us as feminists and people who use skulls as our avatars, even though they're like, what, 4 or 5 people that you mentioned, even though one of them doesn't actually use a skull as his avatar, just has one in his room, and then claiming that we complain about you complaining about your non-issues. The thing is, we complain about your non-issues, like manspreading, safe spaces, stuff like that, because they are issues, yet people are taking you seriously and people are enacting laws over these things, rather than actual issues that are affecting the world, like male suicide, or something perhaps a bit more universal, like the current economic crisis. I don't see any of you lot doing this. Instead, you try to placate people's feelings. This is the thing, you lot think people's feelings are legitimate social issues, when they are not, and that's what we protest, while trying to bring up actual legit issues, which you shoot down and call us all the names under the sun that I addressed earlier in the video.
I mean, in the scale of priorities, that's like even lower, right? You know, you've got the real problems, you've got the things that feminists worry about, and then you've got you going,
Well, let's take a look at this, shall we? Real problems. So the problems that we bring up, like free speech being an issue. For example, you lot are trying to remove it as we speak. Twitter and YouTube are enacting these changes because social justice warriors and extreme leftists are telling them to. The issue of Islam and other religions, unless it's Christianity, don't criticise them because that's racist apparently. Men's issues, apparently men don't have issues, or we should just not tackle them in a way that would help men, just genderless, as Christiosity would say. And then feminist problems. See, what you consider to be sexist is not usually sexist, and how is racism a feminist issue exactly? Isn't that an anti-racism issue, an anti-racists issue, a civil rights activists issue? I don't know. Don't know what that's got to do with anything. And then you say that we whine about the other two, stuff like that. No, that's not how it works, and you know that's not how it works. This is just you poisoning the well and making shit up as per usual, Draco, and it's not funny.
How dare they? How dare they have different priorities from me?
I think you'll find it's the other way around, because you're the ones who complain about us not taking your fifis right, or your perceived oppressions and systems of oppressions seriously. So yeah, don't reverse this bullshit, don't try and project.
Why can't they do what I do? Whine about whining. Forever. for a living.
I know you're being sarcastic, but you basically just admitted that all you guys do is whine. And that's exactly what you do. You whine about non-issues, and then when we tried to bring up these proper issues, you dismiss them, and now you're saying that we're dismissing. Jesus Christ. Ugh, enough of you.
Why don't you seem as concerned with actual feminist theory in academia as you are with wrecking people for views?
Once again, intellectual rigor versus ponage. Teal dear, your video has given them another argument to debunk, which gets away from the real things that we need to talk about. So let me just debunk this one last time. 1, we debunk their arguments, not the people. The arguments are being pwned. And 2, how many videos have I seen about the wage gap, about the one in Affirmative, about patriarchy, all this stuff being debunked in these videos and in videos about the subjects themselves? A hell of a lot. It's a rite of passage to do these things. And usually the best way to debunk these things is through somebody arguing about them in their own videos. At least on YouTube, that's how it works. There, simple, done, next.
Since so many of you profess to be admirers of second-wave feminism as opposed to third-wave feminism, I thought it would be interesting to ask which second-wave feminists in particular do you appreciate?
Once again, Steve cannot name examples. In fact, none of these people can actually name any examples of anything that they're talking about here. Why is it that you can never do so, yet I can? Isn't that interesting? But to answer your question, most people that I know of respect Camille Paglia and Christina Hoff Sommers, but that's about it. There's really no other second wavers that they like, because they're all horrible. They all come up with these toxic, horrible theories that the third wave people believe in today. This is what I always say, the second wave isn't what it's cracked up to be.
Which books written by second-wave feminists have you read and found interesting? Which second-wave feminist activists have you specifically admired as you formed the opinion that you like second-wave feminism but you have no use for third-wave feminism? I'm just curious.
I don't have a use for any of it. I just respect some people who aren't bigots in that movement. But I want to ask the reverse question. What egalitarian, MRA, stuff like that books have you read and who do you admire? Because you don't like any of us whatsoever. That's why you block us and remove yourself from us. So why are you asking us that?
You do understand that reading the title of a book or an article or watching the first 15 seconds of a video is not going to give you a deep, nuanced understanding of what that book or article or video is about, right?
No shit, Michael. It doesn't. But which anti-SJWs are doing this? Who?
That being said, how can you expect to understand or critique feminist sources if you don't even attempt to understand what they're trying to say?
Yet more projection. How come you refuse to address our sources? How come you refuse to read our sources when we lay them out? Why do you have to dismiss them as sexist, racist, homophobic, etc.? Why is that? Why? You have done this, Michael. Also, why do you feel the need to Dr. Bering's speech in the hangout that you did with him in order to make him look like he said things that are pro-rape when he never said that in the first place? If you're going to accuse us of not reading sources and understanding theory without really reading it, even though we clearly do read the stuff and know what it's about, how come you have to lie about someone if you do these things? If you listen to what he says, why do you still have to lie about him? Just thought that was interesting, Michael.
Why is trying and failing to debunk a study into sexual assault the #1 priority for a rational thinker now?
Again, this is not a #1 priority, but this is a study, a widely read study that is influencing college and governmental policy, and it's wrong. Do you know why it's wrong? You know how we didn't fail to debunk it? Because you clearly haven't watched anything or even read the study yourself. It's because it basically makes what is sexual assault very wide, so that everything this person, usually male, will do to this person, usually female, sexual assault. And that's why they've come up with these bogus studies. They've got a conclusion already and are then trying to get to that conclusion, and that makes it a biased study and also makes it wrong. It's not the #1 priority, but it's important to debunk it because it is actually having a real effect on the world. This is why we have cases like UVA, Duke Lacrosse, and all other stuff like that.
Does it maybe say something about your priorities? Does it maybe?
Again, you are asserting that it is our #1 priority, and what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, which is what I'm going to do. But even then, it says nothing about our priorities, because this thing does influence policy from universities and schools to government. So I'd say we have pretty good priorities, that we are debunking this bogus study, and we did read it, and we are not illiterate, because then that's an ad hominem, isn't it? Again, you seem to have a lot of ad hominems in you. You don't really have any points to actually make, do you, Draco?
Does it? Nah, it's fine. It's the feminazis. We have to stop them. They're taking away our video games.
You know, it's funny because he's being really sarcastic about that. Yeah, that's exactly what they are doing. In Target Australia, they removed GTA 5 copies, which are sold for adults, because some feminists complained about the violence in the game being against women, even though anyone can be killed in that game. And when you play the actual missions of the game, more men get killed. In fact, all the principal bad guys are men. So, yeah, they are actually trying to remove our video games. And they are trying to stop these so-called sexist Japanese video games from being imported over here to be sold. That's why a lot of Japanese developers refuse to publish here. Funny that, isn't it, people?
Look, Anita, I'm sorry, but I can't. We can't actually destroy video games. That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I also forgot that before Hatred actually got sold, it was taken off of Steam because of the backlash by a certain people. But then again, I could be wrong, couldn't I, people? And it's also not like Fire Emblem was... And it's not like It's not like the recent Fire Emblem game was censored in its Western release because of some problematic features. But then again, I could be wrong.
One of the major arguments that I see in many of your videos is that it is possible to separate criticism of the religion of Islam from the actual Muslim people. And yet, this line seems to be crossed very often. I see things like raghead or camel fucker or other things like that in your comment sections. I see people taking very serious shots at Muslims in videos and hangouts, and they don't get called out.
Well, who are they? Name names. If they're in the comments section, give me a screenshot of these people being horrible to Muslim people and using ad hominems. It's not hard. And again, you've just defeated your own argument because these people aren't actually attacking the ideology. They're attacking the people who belong to that ideology. So technically, they're just being insulting to a person who is a Muslim and not to the ideology itself. This isn't actually an argument. They're just being horrible to them. Whereas in our videos, we attack what they believe in.
At least not that I can see.
Or you could have made it up, or you refuse to go to our actual videos, actually look at our comment section. And by the way, they're comment sections, and that's where the idiots tend to flock, in both sides. It's funny how you lot will just completely ignore your own fans who will spread hate as well, but whatever.
So my question is this: why should a person of conscience who is concerned about the Muslim people in their community not being harmed or mistreated, why should they believe that you're actually only attempting to look at the ideas and talk about the ideas if you ignore bigotry that's occurring right in front of you? And in that light, would you be willing to break bread and salt with moderate Muslim people on your videos, have hangouts, invite them to your channels, just in order to build some bridges there and to learn more about what they think and how they feel and what their experience has been, so that information and knowledge can be furthered?
Well, firstly, I've got to be pointed to the actual bigotry that's apparently being talked about here in order to deal with it. And by the way, even if I tell these people, don't say this, don't say that, because it's bad, these people are still going to do it anyway, because one, they will tell me, don't tell me what you can and cannot say here. Are you trying to tone police me? So when I do that, I will get criticised. But if I don't do it, you lot will come over and tell me that, oh, you are tolerant of hate. Yet you will never ever tell your own side, and you'll never tell the Muslims who go and blindly defend their faith, calling us insults, to do the same. Because I got quite a few of it when I last responded to Are We QQ now, also known as QQ. A lot of Muslims were just leaving hate. So what do you want me to do? And also, yes, I would love these people to come and talk to me. I would love to go and hang out with these people. In fact, have you watched Tyler Preston's videos? Have you seen atheist channels trying to debate these people? Have you seen any of this? Because you don't watch us, and it's clear to see. And also, what's interesting is you don't really follow us on Twitter, because some Saudis were trying to false flag Focus Break Habib, a ex-Muslim. That's another group of people you seem to ignore and refuse to help. Ex-Muslims. Is that because apostates are killed in Islam and you people defend Islam? But whatever. They were false flagging him on Twitter, trying to keep him out from saying things that expose their religion. And he said, well, why don't you come on and debate us? Why are you doing this? Defend yourselves. And they didn't. They pussied out. So when they do this, what's the point?
Do you deny that systemic racism against black people is like a thing in general? If so, what? Okay, just step up, just cover your ears for a second and let the smart people talk.
Really, nigga?
We don't necessarily deny that some things are probably systematically against them. For example, there is a prison sentencing act where white men are sentenced less than black men. It's about 2 to 3 times the number, is it not? But of course, this discounts that, the black community in America, at least, commit more crime per capita, which you people deny, but never mind.
If not, why is it so much more important to you to demonize groups like Black Lives Matter than to actually use your platforms to discuss actual solutions to issues surrounding race and racism?
1. We do not demonize Black Lives Matter, we expose them. And the reason why we criticize them is because they espouse racist beliefs, they espouse violent beliefs, they want to see cops get killed and have caused the deaths of cops in Dallas and Baton Rouge. And these are not the people who we should turn to solve the issues of racism. Maybe trying to think logically and use reason like you want us to use about this topic might actually help. Maybe if we just be realistic about it and make sure that the topic has a no-holds-barred discussion and that we can all agree that any race can be racist because social justice warriors believe only white people can be racist. So can we at least be realistic with it before we start talking this utter ideological crap?
If you've ever discussed or done a video about black on black crime, when are you going to do a video about white on white crime and what we as white people can do to solve the problems in our community?
Are you talking about the white community in America, which is made up of different white people who aren't even necessarily from America originally? Or are you talking about European whites who are also different and have different issues? You've got to, be specific, because when we talk about black on black crime, we're talking about African Americans, which would have a very different issue to, say, Afro-Caribbeans in the UK or African British people as well, or any other people in Europe for that matter. All different things. But we're talking about America, aren't we? Because Americans, they can't actually specify that they're talking about American issues, just issues, because America is the world. But never mind, let's just go with American stuff. The reason it's brought up and the reason why people do videos about it is because social justice warriors, and specifically Black Lives Matter, always keenly ignore them because they want to craft this narrative that most black deaths are due to police brutality when it's not. It's actually due to them murdering themselves because of gang violence and other stuff like that. Not all of it is gang, obviously. And most of that can be easily addressed through the end of the drug war. But you people deny this or refuse to talk about this and try to craft a different narrative. You ignore these issues and thus they fester and grow. And also, it's a big issue because it's not just black on black crime, but the crime numbers in general are committed far more by black people in America than, say, white people, Asian people and Hispanics. Although with the FBI thing, they group Hispanics and whites together, but I don't know the rationale behind that. But there we go. That's why people bring it up. White crime statistically, even though everything is equally bad because they're the same crimes, is not much of an issue. Asian crime statistically is not much of an issue. But the other one is, sadly. Oh, and you wanted a solution for white on white crime? Well, I'm not white, but I would say do the same thing. Stop the drug war, legalise drugs so that people don't get arrested and put in prison for simply having drugs on them. A lot of them will have issues that need to be treated, and this will help everyone, actually, funnily enough. But let's stick it with white and black people. That will help them. Also, maybe having a father figure of some kind, maybe the actual father, if he is capable of raising his kids, he should be allowed to do so with a shared parenting type thing. That could help them because his influence could potentially stop them from going off the deep end, because a lot of gang members, and this is white, black, Asian, what have you, go into these gangs because they need a paternal influence, and that is the wrong type of paternal influence we need to be giving our kids, isn't it? Would you agree?
Why is a literal teenager's different definition of racism from you so horrifying that you all have to go, no! No, we have to stop him! We've got to debunk him now! Ah!
I'm sorry, but that is a gross misrepresentation of what actually happened. 1, there is no different definition here. There's no different interpretation of it. Racism is racism. What she was saying, and this has nothing to do with her being a teenager, her age has nothing to do with it, because it wasn't long ago that I was a teenager, and we have several other teenagers of a similar age to her. We have Feminism is for Nobody. We have Spinosaurus kin, Griffiths, although I think she's now 20. Oh, so that might be mute anyway. But there are loads of other teenagers on our side who don't come up with the belief that we don't have these people come up and say the most insane shit like all white people are racist, or cis people are transphobic, and all men are sexist. That's what she was saying, and that's why people called her out on it, because it's insane. It is as prejudiced as what she was trying to call out. Age has nothing to do with it. And I like how you think, oh, these men had to go and attack him, these old people. Well, I'm not that much older than her. Yes, I said her, because she's a transgender. We did it because she was grossly wrong, and it has to be called out. Racism, homophobia, hell, even transphobia, because she said she was transphobic, has to be called out, right? Don't you agree?
Wherever did you get the idea that racism was a self-applied identity?
I'm sorry, what? Who believes that? A self-implied identity? What, racism? Or what? That doesn't make sense, Steve. Why are you making shit up?
And if the only true racists are the racists who self-identify as racists, how can we ever expect to make any social progress to reduce racism? Or did I just answer my own question?
I don't remember us ever trying to do a no true Scotsman fallacy on racists. What we're talking about is, I assume, people like Gazi Kodzo, BLM, Sensei Ashimatse, whatever she's called, Francesca Ramsey, are racist because they espouse racist beliefs about particular groups of people, namely white people. And we also do not believe that only white people can be racist. We believe that anyone can be racist, because apparently there's races, right? God, I think this is what I'm getting from you. Just because there's some... Is this what you're trying to say? I don't know. It's murky and muddy and I don't know what you're on about. So I'm just trying to answer this as best as I can, people, alright?
You often say that you are for equality of opportunity. But if people of color, for instance, have to overcome barriers whites do not...
What are these barriers that you speak of? I have not seen any barriers for myself as a mixed race man. I've not seen any. The only barrier that I have is a lack of experience. And that's not because of my race, that's because I was a student who went to his hometown university, well, one of his hometown universities, and didn't work much until right near the end of his university days, and is now finding it difficult to get a job, also with a degree that's probably not worth much for employers. But yeah, that's not because of my race. That's because of my life choices. That's the only barrier that I've got, and it's got nothing to do with race. So what are these barriers? Conversely, my darker cousin, who's also mixed race, he gets more job opportunities and more jobs than me because he has more experience, because he worked well before he even went to university. So before he went to university and he needed a job to pay his rent, he had a CV that employers could trust. I don't. And that's not because of our race, that's because of our life choices.
Such as discrimination and unequal treatment, as are well documented in various studies.
Again, what are these studies and what are these discriminatory practices? Because that is against the law in both of our countries. You're not allowed to do that. In fact, in every single job application that I've seen, they have a section where they particularly say that they want people who are like me, an ethnic minority, because by law they have to. In your country, not in my country, I've not seen these, you have black-only scholarships and you have funds and stuff like that that are available only to minorities and women but not white men. That's discriminatory, is it not? So poor white men cannot even apply for these, even though they're under the same circumstances as some of these people. And some of those other people might not even be poor. See how it works?
Then how can the current situation be thought of as equal opportunity in any real way? And why do you consider it racist to discuss these issues?
Name me one anti-SJW that considers talking about affirmative action, talking about issues that may or may not plague ethnic minorities. I certainly don't have any issue with talking about it. Racist. Who? Who does? You consider it racist to suggest that maybe poor white men should be given some kind of fund, like what Milo tried to do. Even though that may or may not be a con, the idea was out there and you lot attacked it because it was white men, because you don't like white men. You even find it racist to just dismantle affirmative action and instead maybe think of something different. Maybe try and uplift poor people of all races so that they can have the same opportunities as each other. Because the rich don't have any issue getting into Mizzou and causing issues, do they? Maybe if you lot weren't so scared of bringing up class, which is the real issue here, maybe we might get somewhere. Also, maybe give us examples of discriminatory action against these individuals, and then we might also be able to get somewhere and deal with that. But until then, come up with something that isn't just conjecture or this thing happens, believe me. Can you talk about it?
Do you understand basic English syntax? Like, if I say this cat is pretty, I don't mean that all other cats aren't pretty.
Look, you smug little prick, I think you'll find that's your issue. The collectivization thing, the collectivism, that's your issue, because I'm not the one trying to collectivize people here and refer to them all as groups and think all their experiences are the same. So do you understand the basic syntax? Because you are the person in your videos who collectivize people. You collectivized anti-SJWs in your New Skeptics video, whatever it was called, that I debunked. You did the exact same thing, but apparently we have an issue with it. Stop projecting, one janitor, please.
Like, do you really not get why saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is not only racially insensitive, but just patently ridiculous?
The irony when he tries to school us on grammar ends up being grammatically incorrect and stupid at the exact same time, people. How is all lives matter, which includes black people, Asian people, mixed race people, white people, Hispanic people, Antarctic people, penguins, sheep, cows, all sorts. All lives matter. How is that racially insensitive, and how is it ridiculous? How is it ridiculous? Are you trying to say it's ridiculous? Of course we believe all lives matter, it's just that black lives Lives Matter more. Is that what you're trying to say? Because that's racist and that's ridiculous. And you have a case of doublethink, my friend. Cognitive dissonance, if you want to get smart about it.
Isn't it offensive to men to assume that a man could only ever want equality for women and therefore be comfortable with feminism as a whole in order to get laid?
No, it isn't. It might be crude and crass, but that's not referring to all men. It's referring to feminist and social justice men. And judging by what I've seen in your movement and in your community on YouTube, that's exactly what a lot of them are trying to do. For example, I'm pretty sure I've heard Abaddon 5, even Dick Coughlin was accused of it, and I think I also saw Hannibal the Victor and all sorts of others trying to do this. And then they wonder, and why we also notice why a lot of them get accused of sexual harassment by people like JJ Talks. Just wondering, there's a link, a causal link, maybe even a correlation to all of this, Tim, but whatever. Only in your collectivist thinking could this be offensive to all men. I don't feel offended, but then again, I'm not a feminist.
And that reduces us to beasts?
Yet more projection. You see, we're not saying that they're animalistic. We're not saying that they cannot control themselves. We're saying they are opportunistic people that are using this to get into women's pants, which is a moral failure on their part. We're not the ideology that says all men are potential rapists, on the other hand. That is turning men into beasts. And that was your ideology that said that, and it continues to espouse this.
If that was the case, wouldn't I attempt to get laid from my views instead of not ever trying that?
Tim, you're getting married, and please just stop chatting shit right now. You're being irritating.
If you say you're an egalitarian, will you call out the man-hating slurs that you see coming from people within your community? People who use terms like cuck, beta male, faggot, or mangina?
As a resident egalitarian, I can easily say that these are not man-hating slurs. These are slurs unique to people on your side. They are slurs for male feminists. These are not slurs for all men. Or, if they're on the alt-right, cuck can also be used for the wrong type of conservative, but that's another thing. Yes, they're crude, crass, and maybe we should avoid using them as it can border into ad hominem sometimes, but it's not man-hating. They don't do it because they hate men. They do it because a lot of these people exhibit behaviours like a beta, like a cuck, people who keel over backwards and hate themselves because of their ideology. That's what they refer to, Christy.
All of these things basically distill men down into thinking that the most important thing about them is to be having sex with a woman.
Again, when an anti-SJW uses these terms, they're not used in a sexual context, which is what you're trying to do right here. This is what a PUA would use. This is what an alt-righter probably would use. But even then, that's probably. They're most likely going to use it in a political context like we do, but tends to be about leftists or the wrong type of conservative. That's what it's for. It's a political context. These are people who keel over backwards and hate themselves because an ideology tells them to hate themselves because they're toxic. Have you heard of toxic masculinity? I think that's far worse for men than saying cuck and beta male, because that attacks all men, not just a particular group of weak people who have brainwashed.
That's rather offensive. So what are you doing to stop this kind of behaviour in your community?
Not much I can do. Free speech and all that. I can't tell people to not do anything. But what are you going to do about your ideology that, nothing. And it's intrinsically linked to misandry, your ideology, so yeah.
What is the number of followers, the number of likes, the number of dislikes, the number of retweets, the number of subscribers, any of those numbers, any of those metrics, what have they got to do with the argument?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. It's what you lot bring up every single time. It's why Bearing, Sargon, Undoomed are getting attacked right now by these people in this video. Tim, Michael Rowlands, Christy Winters, they're all using their numbers, their metrics against them, because apparently that's bullying, because people dislike their videos. It's not us who are doing it.
Deepak Chopra, for example, a man who trots out an endless stream of pseudoscientific quantum woo bollocks, has nearly 3 million followers. So what? Those people follow him because he tells them what they want to hear. Why even mention the number of followers you have? What difference does it make?
Who has used this as an argument? Because I've not seen anyone use that ever. Only you lot use it when it comes to bullying and stuff like that. Like, only punch up, not down. To try and stop bigger channels from making videos on feminists or response videos to smaller channels who happen to be feminists and who believe in the same things that they do.
Why is it that you go on and fucking on about safe spaces and trigger warnings and delicate little flowers?
Only because you go on and on and on about them, trying to implement them into universities and stuff like that, which is stifling free speech. And also, you delicate little flowers that get offended at absolutely everything.
but continue to hide behind your cartoon avatars and your childish pseudonyms. And whenever anyone calls you out on your sexist, racist, homophobic, bigoted rhetoric, you become the argument of your own scorn and are hashtag triggered.
There are 2 YouTubers in this video that are anonymous, and I'm not once to use anonymity against them. You are going to use anonymity against us, and again, who's getting triggered? And how are they bigoted in any way? So far, the only people who are being bigoted are the alt-right and SJWs. And also, you're a liar, Roland, so I don't necessarily have to believe you on this, do I?
Are you willing to publicly acknowledge and admonish the massive amount of hatred, bullying, harassment, and intimidation that a lot of your fans infringe upon people?
We know it happens, but what can we do about it? Also, you have yet to acknowledge your own fans doing it, because that would be just not good for your argument now, would it? Because then it would prove that you're just as bad. Because I've had Marina Shut Up fans, I've had people who are Guardian readers and Akala fans who are social justice warriors attack me and call me all sorts of names under the sun because I disagreed with them. So yeah. I also had someone who I know in person try to publicly shame me on Facebook. So yeah, when are you going to acknowledge the exact same thing? Because apparently you lot are all crystal clean with nothing like that happening at all. When you are the single #1 biggest purveyors of the angry Twitter hate mob. This is how 2 people have lost their jobs a couple of years ago because they use a dongle joke. This is how Tim Hunt lost his job. This is how people in Canada are getting arrested for disagreeing with people.
And I don't mean these tiny disclaimers that you put under the description fold or flash for 2 seconds at the beginning of the video that you know nobody reads.
So what's the point? What can we do? Because I was going to say that these people don't read them. No matter how long we put them up, no matter how much we write them in the descriptions, people don't listen, which defeats your whole argument. People don't listen. What are we supposed to do then?
I mean a public and ongoing anti-bullying stance. Or do you kind of like watching your fans go around harassing people and calling them slurs and telling them to kill themselves? You kind of like it, don't you? I mean, if that's your thing, I guess that's just what you're into. Just makes you a dick.
You know what, one janitor? Fuck you. Seriously, just fuck you. I don't have to listen to that bullshit. How dare you assume and assert that we like people getting bullied? How dare you assert that we don't want anything to happen? What do you mean an anti-bullying campaign? How's that going to solve anything? We've had numerous anti-bullying campaigns in real life that has not solved the issue of bullying. How do we know that these people are getting bullied? How do we not know that these people are simply getting criticised? And as a person who actually was bullied for a very long time in high school and who suffered prejudice because of his disability, autism, in real life, I find that to be highly insulting that you think I like people getting bullied. How bloody dare you assert such a thing? Because I don't see you criticising the Twitter hate mobs being formed by your ideological allies. I don't see you doing that. I don't see you supporting people getting attacked because they're an ex-Muslim or an ex-feminist. I don't see you attacking those people and criticising them. You don't criticise your own people for doing the exact same behaviour, so go fuck yourself. Don't give me this crap.
Why do you find it so hard to believe that feminists are being harassed online?
Because the people who complain about it are always proven to be liars and can never actually give us any evidence to suggest that they are being harassed. So there. It's also interesting that you also ignore the fact that we also get harassed and that other people who have nothing to do with this get harassed by feminists. But, you know, whatever, it's okay when you do it.
Do you understand the key importance of reproducibility and repeatability in scientific research? That's simply going to Google Scholar, doing a 30-second search for keywords and pulling out the first paper you find that backs up your stance is not a particularly credible way to do research. That you have to have a much broader overview to read the material, to follow the citations through, to look at the broad brush approach to a particular problem. You do realise that you're as much of a social justice warrior as those you critique?
So, in asserting what we do, you've just admitted that's what social justice warriors do. That's what you do. You do all these things. You don't have a broad brush on this topic. You just find something that looks like it agrees with you and just puts it in there. That's what you do. Well, thank you. Thank you for defeating your own argument.
It's just that you espouse a different form of social justice, a rather less considerate, rather less forgiving, rather less kind form of social justice.
Yes, science, facts, statistics, they are not kind. They are not forgiving. They are not compassionate. They are cold, logical. That's what they are. And that's not a type of social justice. That's just called being rational.
If you identify as an egalitarian, then I'm interested in your take on the usefulness of the concept of the original position as laid out by John Rawls in his theory of justice.
I don't know what that is. Why should I care, Christy? Why are you just bringing up books by authors? What has this got to do with anything? Ah, is that a gotcha moment? You can't consider yourself an egalitarian if you don't know what this is.
As a supporter, as a proponent of freedom of speech, why do you want to quash academic freedom?
No, we do not want to quash academic freedom. What we want is to make sure that it's peer-reviewed and bad ideas are not being brainwashed into people. That's what we worry about. Because in the social sciences, students are getting brainwashed into believing certain things that are simply not true. That is not being against academic freedom, that is being against brainwashing. And by the way, if we're against academic freedom, how come most universities seem to be against anybody remotely right-wing offering a different point of view, or people who are left-wing that offer the wrong type of view? They only have to be social justice types, feminist types. Why? Is this just more projection?
If you're not familiar with the concept of academic freedom, it's worth, in the UK at least, looking up the 1988 Education Reform Act and seeing what that says about the rights of academics to put across unpopular opinions.
And yet they get no platformed, and yet they are not allowed to espouse these things. It's funny because when Thunderfoot was, and I know you don't like Thunderfoot, so you'll probably dismiss this because it's Thunderfoot, but you can't deny it's not true. When he was allowed apparent academic freedom, at least the freedom to say whatever PZ wanted him to say in free thought blogs, and was denied it when he wrote things that they didn't like. How is that, therefore, that people on your side of academic freedom, and clearly they're not? And how come we have no platforming? And why do we deny people entry into universities? Because they don't believe in what we believe. They're ignoring that law, aren't they?
Why are you so obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian?
We're not obsessed, but then by that logic, how come you lot are obsessed with Elliot Rodger, Thunderfoot, Sargon, Bering as a recent example? Why are you obsessed with responding to the same people over and over again? It's almost like hypocrisy is at work here. But to answer your question, we're not obsessed. We just try to stop her bullshit from being peddled because people take her seriously, because she espouses anti-free speech, anti-free expressive views, and she's a censorious ideologue who hates gamers and is anti-gamer. That's why we do it. In fact, we've been trying not to talk about her as much recently, which is why she's probably very desperate to get that history thing going on, but hey, whatever.
Do you really think you can spend your entire life in a perpetual state of emotional immaturity? Do you actually imagine that you will be able to perpetuate your adolescence for your entire existence? Wait, didn't somebody else ask this one? Wait, I gotta... Ah, fuck.
Name me one person who tries to do that on our side, and maybe we can actually have a discussion on that. Until then, stop asserting and stop projecting, because you're the people who want to infantilize women and college students and, responsible adults because they're fee-fees. You're the people who are bringing up people to not be able to handle their own emotions and different points of view. This is why we use triggering. This is why you lot also use the word triggering. It's triggering because this person said something. And I think that's about it, people. I cannot be bothered responding anymore, because after that it's the credits and a stupid skit by Draco Malfoy. You know what? One of my promises, I was trying to be more concise, but when I come back after a week off, I make a 50-minute video. I was hoping this would be about 40 minutes, but oh well. Anyway, people, until next time, I'll see you all later.